Buying a $300,000 house with no down payment for $500 a month. Sounds too good to be true? Well, I had a crazy idea, and the more I thought about it, the less crazy it sounds. What if I said this crazy idea of mine would also inject unbelievable amounts of money back into the economy in multiple ways while also ending most debt slavery as we know it? Before you comment 45 seconds into this video about how I'm wrong, watch the entire video. I address some of the issues that do exist with my idea. This radical idea is investment-backed mortgages. Before we begin, let me say this. I understand completely that under the current mortgage finance system, this is not possible. I understand many will say, I work in the mortgage industry and that's not how this works. Well, no shit. I'm a homeowner with 3 young children, and I'm terrified of what challenges they'll face when they buy a house, if or when that's even possible. This is a radical solution that solves a lot of problems at once. This is as outside the box as it can get. This is me seeing everyone eat shit sandwiches and asking why aren't they using the jar of peanut butter on the shelf. Owning a home will basically be impossible for the average American within the next decade. We need a radical change before everyone's only option is renting an apartment from BlackRock. Let me explain. With the current mortgage model, you buy a house, the mortgage company charges you interest and profits off of it. They reinvest the profits multiple times and make even more money. Let's say you buy a $300,000 house at 7% interest and your payment is around $2,000 a month for 30 years. At the end of the loan, you paid the bank around $718,000. But it's okay. The house is worth around that much by, that time in 30 years anyway, so that's a fair deal. But what if a ton of that money could have stayed in your pocket? And instead of interest going to the bank to reinvest multiple times to maximize their own profits, it could be used to grow our own economy like never before. What I'm suggesting is that we flip mortgages completely upside down. Lending that actually lifts all boats instead of extracting wealth and concentrating it. With my investment-backed loan concept, you would get a mortgage from a newly formed federal lending institution, but the name mortgage is where the similarities end. And I know what you're saying. Did he just casually float nationalizing the mortgage industry? That's socialism. This isn't going to work like socialism. In fact, you can still have all of your other mortgage products available, and there'll be uses for those as well. And I think the biggest complaint you'll hear is, but the government issuing home loans is going to cause inflation. I hate to break this to you, but all lending is inflationary. Many people are under the impression that when you get a mortgage, real money is being moved from one account to another to pay the seller of the home. Wrong. The money is created out of thin air, and even crazier, the ratio for how much money they need on hand versus how much they can lend out was removed during the pandemic. Banks can now create as much money as they want, regardless of how much money they have on hand. We literally have no clue how much money actually exists in our economy. The banks print fake money and profit, but in the meantime, you have to play with real money, and you can't just make your own. Here's how buying a house would work with my system. This new federal lender would calculate your home payment based on how much money you would need to put into an IRA at an estimated annual 8% growth rate, for an example, to pay off that $300,000 at the end of a 30-year term. The government keeps the money in the account, and once you make your last payment, the government gives you the deed to your house free and clear. The payment on a $300,000 home works out to be just $518. That's right. You heard that correctly. And because of compounding interest, the government only needed you to pay $183,000 over that 30-year term for it to turn into that $300,000. That means that you save over $500,000 compared to a traditional mortgage. And your house at the end of that is still worth that $700,000.
But wait, there's more.
Most would agree that $500 a month is super affordable. So let's say the feds charge an extra 15% fee and made you put that into the IRA as well, but you keep that at the end of it. Now, at the end of your 30-year loan, your payment is $586 instead of $515 a month, but now you're walking away with an extra $100,000 in cash that you get to keep. This is going to encourage financial responsibility and give a lot of people nest eggs who normally don't plan for this type of stuff. Why not 30% more? That's a $663 a month payment for a $300,000 house. At the end of that, you get the house and you walk away with over $200,000 in an IRA as a retirement egg. But what's the incentive for the government to do this? What do they get out of it? Turns out it's a win-win, but there will be some losers and I'll talk about them later. First, let me explain how much this would impact the economy. If 90% of currently held mortgages were under my proposed IRA backed solution, the stock markets would start receiving an incredible amount of capital injected monthly into these new IRAs, around $22 billion a month or $275 billion a year. This is around the same size as all annual 401k contributions combined. And because everyone is always buying homes, this would be a steady injection that would cause the markets to soar, but actually stabilize. It could actually end the boom and bust cycle completely. Because of the massive and predictable cash influx into the markets, trillions would flow into index funds and diversified ETFs.
But wait, there's more.
People who have $2,000 monthly mortgage payments would free up $1,400 monthly with these plans to either invest or spend on things that actually contribute to our economy, like goods and services. This would cause an extreme level of prosperity that would be felt in every sector. Homeowners could also put that extra $1,400 a month into that IRA as well, which would get them an extra $2 million at the end of their mortgage and would inject even more money directly into the market. This would be a massive stimulus package, bigger than the 2009 Recovery Act, happening every year, but no one borrowed a dime and the market still picked the winners. So here's what the federal government gets. 1, incredible economic prosperity. 2, abundant access for its citizens to affordable housing without messy government housing projects and vouchers. 3, stabilized stock markets, potentially no more boom and bust cycles. 4, no need for traditional FHA subsidies and likely an end to most government housing dependency. 5, they keep the money that you paid for the house sitting in the market, stabilizing it and growing it. And as it grows, it eats away the national debt. 6, everyone has a retirement egg or cushion from that extra 15% they paid in the IRA, which means less social services would be needed because people would have at least something to tap into besides depending on Social Security benefits. And finally, 7, a construction industry boom that you've never seen before. New houses would pop up everywhere, and entire cities would be created, and old ones would be transformed. But remember, like I said, there are losers in this plan, the mortgage companies themselves. But something tells me there's not going to be a bunch of protesters outside. Save the mortgage brokers, please. Will someone think of the mortgage brokers? Will this create new problems? Absolutely. There are some regulations that I thought of off the top of my head that would fix a lot of them. Borrowers must still meet traditional income to loan ratios, not payments. No $1 million mansion just because you want to stretch your payment and be house poor. 2, no second mortgages can be taken out without serious qualifications. 3, 1 loan per household. Must be owner occupied until it's paid off. No landlords, no flippers, no scams. And 4, you must be an American citizen. You can't be a shady network of LLCs that's used to funnel money into the market from a foreign country. So am I crazy? Or is it more crazy not to do something like this? It seems that most people on both sides of the political aisle know that there's an urgent need to address this issue, but can't agree on what that looks like. What happens when AI knocks out half of all 6-figure jobs? Housing needs to get incredibly cheaper and fast. This is a solution that avoids the pitfalls of price controls and government subsidies. There's not going to be mandated Soviet-style block apartments, no housing shortfalls. The free market still works, but now the banks aren't siphoning tons of capital out of the economy, and it could actually be used for businesses and services that contribute. So share this if you agree or think it's an interesting idea. Comment and tell me why I'm an idiot if you think it's stupid. But make sure to explain why you think this current system is working wonders and how it's going to end well, because from where I'm sitting and anybody with a calculator, it's not going to.